September 22nd, 2013. Guys, I want to pick this video up where we left off on the last Anunnaki. Now, if this is too much for you, before you say something stupid, just put it on the shelf and think about it, because I'm going to wrap up a lot of the world history in this video. I'm going to tell you what's going on this planet. If it's too much for you, again, just put it on the shelf and think about it, okay? But what had happened was the Anunnaki working class had revolted. This is ancient Sumeria, thousands of years older than the Bible, guys. The oldest written tablets found on Earth, okay? Don't deny your history just because you've locked your mind into something else. Open your mind. Deception will not come from opening your eyes, but from closing them. Do you understand? Are you listening? Now, instead of when the Anunnaki working class revolted, instead of the elite destroying them right there, they took man, the primitive species here, and changed the DNA, shortened their life, changed the chromosomes, did a lot of things that really limited the capabilities of man. And we've struggled with that for thousands and thousands of years. But so it worked out for 1,200 years. They taught man to dig the canals and dig the gold, do all the work, so they could sit in the White House or the Queen's Castle in Britain. Whatever they do, so as they watch us work, not only do we work and provide their sustenance, they tax us so they can play their world games. Nothing's changed. It's all the same. But after 1,200 years, the people started to revolt. They were tired of it. They couldn't take that spirit of God out of the humans, that spirit of freedom, spirit that knows that no other man should be able to rule you. Do you understand? I don't care if they're born a prince. I don't care if they ride around in a carriage. I don't care if their baby's on TV. They're no more than you or I. And it's almost pathetic. I don't even watch TV when they show some of this stuff. But, guys, nothing has changed. Now, after the 1,200 years, I want to read this excerpt from some of the tablets. It says, "The country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their racket. Enlil had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I am losing sleep over their racket. Give the order that the Surupu disease shall break out." Now, right under that, I have the definition of this and some of the meanings. But it says, Surupu is concocted. It is concocted flesh that is some medically or magically prepared meat. This is how they started thinning the population. Does that sound familiar? Is in your genetically modified foods, the steroids in the meat? Does it, guys? Not only that, the scariest thing to me of all of it is the mandatory school shots for our children. It's killing them. Don't let them take it. If you've got to homeschool your children, do it. I did mine. They didn't take these shots. I didn't take them. Don't make them. You're putting them in a line with a bunch of murderous doctors. Now, the plague breaks out, but Atrihassus, and that is in today's Bible, we call him Noah. They called him Gilgamesh. It was the one person throughout the history and all the books that built the ark. Okay. Now, because Atrihassus was the son of Enki, Enki helped him throughout his life. But this time he told him, he said, he advised Atrihassus to have the people stop praying to their personal gods and to start praying and offering sacrifices to the plague god Namtar. Namtar is so shamed by the show of attention that he wipes away his hand and the plague ends. Okay? What they did, it's kind of, there's hidden messages in this. Instead of the revolt, which just caused chaos and violence, they shamed the leaders. Now, it says after another 1,200 years, mankind had again multiplied to the point where they are violating Enlil's noise ordinances. It's not noise, guys. It is the revolution. The 99% will not be silent. They wouldn't then. They're not going to be now. It says this time Enlil decides on a drought to reduce the numbers and he gets Adad, the thunder rain storm god, to hold back the rain. He uses his heart machine. Guys, if you don't think their technology was a million years ahead of ours, you got a long way to go, brother. I'm telling you. They had all of this. They had the ability to build the pyramids after this, fly. They traveled through space. This was nothing. HARP was amateur technology to these guys. But so the same thing happens. Now, Atrahasis is still alive. This is 1,200 more years, okay? That's because of this half-breed genetics. Now, he says he appeals to Enki again, and he advises the same thing. So everybody that's there stops praying to their individual gods, just like it was back then, or what they thought were gods, and they appeal to Adad, and they worship him and praise him. And he's so embarrassed that he turns off the heart machine and lets it rain. It brings them back. They were about to starve to death. So now another 1,200 years goes on, and this time Enlil wants to make sure that no one god can weaken his resolve. So he declares, now listen to this, a general embargo on all of nature's gifts. Anu and Adad were to guard heaven, Enlil the earth, and Enki the waters. Remember, he's traced down to Poseidon. It says to see that no means of nourishment reaches the human race. In addition, Enlil decrees infertility. Let the womb be too tight to let the baby out. Now, it says when the second year arrived, they had depleted the storehouses. This is a 6-year period up to a 7th year. Are you listening? It says when the 3rd year arrived, the people's look were changed by starvation. When the 4th year arrived, their upstanding bearing bowed. Their well-set shoulders slouched. The people went out in public hunched over. When the 5th year arrived, a daughter would eye her mother coming in. A mother would not even open the door to the daughter. When the 6th year arrived, they served up a daughter for a meal, served up a son for food. Now, so what does Enki do? He, in charge of the oceans, he releases what they call mass quantities of fish back into that ocean in that area, which we know we're dealing with the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean in that area. And it makes his brother or half-brother Enlil furious. He said, Enki, what are you doing? And Enki told him, he said, I am here, and I will let mankind survive. Now, so what they did, and he said, this time I'm going to do it for good. I'm not going to let you guys, I'm not going to let you, Enki, or any of the other Anunnaki elite change my plans. I'm in charge of the earth. Enlil was the prince of the earth at this time. So he demands that Enki release the waters of the great flood, and that no one knows. He wants the entire human race wiped out. Now, there was a lot of things going on in the stories here. But what happened when the flood was released, if you read the story of Gilgamesh, the Anunnaki elite, as that great tidal wave came over the earth, they lifted off in their spaceships and hovered in orbit as this flood waters receded. Now, Gilgamesh says they lifted up as the water came in like a flock of birds and watched. So After 7 days, it's what they call 7 days inside the ark. Now we know it's that in the Bible it's 150 days, and that's spread out over time. But he landed on Mount Ararat. Atrahasis did. And the reason that he survived was Enki had went against Enlil's orders and told Atrahasis to build the ark. And when they did, they didn't put two of all animals in there. There's no ark on earth that could hold that. They did a 3.5-year search, and they took all the DNA samples and all the seeds and made seed banks and DNA banks. In the text, they put them in cedar boxes and stored them in the ark. Now, Enlil's flying around in his ship, and he thinks mankind has been destroyed. But what has happened is when they did that, they eliminated their food source. They eliminated the workers. They didn't know how to do it, and the earth was covered. They did not know the flood was going to be that bad. Really, they had no control over much of it at all. At that time, the ice caps over the poles, in some places, even in Canada, was 400 feet thick. When those caps broke, they caused tidal waves from both poles. And the Anunnaki were warned. They had, just like we do today, we have the Antarctic stations, the Arctic stations, and they're watching something. And they're going to send a warning to the elite when it's time to duck down and hide, guys. Kind of like the space station and the underground bunkers. Now, as they're flying around up there, they're starting to starve to death. Now, Atrahasis lands the ark on Mount Ararat. He gets out, he makes a sacrifice, and the gods that are flying over in their craft see this, and it says they smell the sweet savor and they land. Now, Enlil is furious. He says, I know that I know that Enki did this. He's the only one that could. And when he confronts him, Enki admits to it. He said, yeah, I did it. I want these people to survive. Now, since these world leaders had almost starved to death when they wiped out their working slaves, they decided to do it a little different next time. Again, they almost starved to death, and it talks about that. They decided to approach it from a different way, and that's still in existence today. And it says that Ninurtu, who was the sister, also called the womb goddess, that was in our first video, she decides that from now on, 1/3 of the women will not give birth successfully. She says that she created a Pasitu demon which will snatch the baby from its mother's lap. They also created several classes of temple women who were not allowed to have children. The priest and the priestess. Okay, guys? Are you listening to what I'm talking about? How many times have you seen the ancient church in Rome travel around the world and wipe out life? From American Indians to Canadian Indians to South America to the Aztecs to the Mayan, all around the world. You've seen this church creep. That when you see these priests that abuse children, create murder, create wars, and celibacy, then all of this was set in place then. That evil is still here now. And here we see where they use religion to start to control man and population. Religion. Now, guys, this video will have to go to 2 parts because of the time limit. But religion today, they have a new thing to control. And it's so sinister and deep of what they've done. And it's called the rapture. It's not biblical. It's nowhere in the Bible. But it is a setup for something that's about to happen, and we're watching the skies now. That's going to be part 2 of the Anunnaki rapture. Heads up.